How to raid good. You guys ready to learn, or at least a little gooder? We're going to talk about the two halves of the raid brain. I mentioned this a couple times in previous raids. There are two parts. You got prog brain, which is when you're learning a fight and you're trying to get through a fight, right? This is most relevant when content just comes out, or you're trying to learn something for the first time, like, say, me and Uwu and me and T, right? Okay? And then there's the parse brain. Parse brain is you've learned the fight. Now, how do I optimize? How do I get better at the fight, right? So these are the two halves of the raid brain, and there are parts that are connective tissue, and there is stuff that directly antagonizes each other. So we're going to talk about the different sides. So we're going to first talk about the prog brain, okay? So a couple of things that the prog brain needs is consistency. You always want to be consistent. When you're progging, consistency means not just like in your rotation or whatever. Sure, you want to be pressing the same buttons and whatever, but you also want to like make your movement consistent, and you want to make sure that the things that you're doing to get through your prog is always consistent. That way, your team always knows what you're about to do, and you know what your team is about to do. So now, the second thing I want to talk about is resilience. When you're progging, resilience is the ability to don't mind, essentially, okay? So don't mind. You're going to wipe a lot, and things are going to happen. Resilience is the ability to get through it. You're going to need this. I've been stuck on the last phase of Uwu for several weeks. Our entire prog team has, right? And we've been stuck there for a while. But you have to have resilience, right? You can't give up, and you don't want to tilt. So it's really, really important to not tilt and to keep trying to be consistent and to keep moving forward, right? The next thing is awareness. When you're progging, it's great that you're focused on pressing your buttons at the right time and resolving this stuff, but awareness is really important. Why? Because things are not going to go always to plan, right? And you're going to have to learn to resolve mechanics. And the other thing, too, is that especially for blind progging, you really need to know, like, where everything is happening. You know, if you have a new buff suddenly, where'd that buff come from? Or the debuff, more importantly. And the cast bar of your, you know, the boss that you're fighting. You need to not only just be aware of your own rotation, but being aware of the surrounding area and awareness to your own teammates. Like, being aware helps prog so much because it allows you to consistently be in the place that you need to be, and you can adjust. And that is what's so important. Okay? And then obviously prog, especially for blind progging, you have to problem solve. You know, when you are learning a fight, you might have one strat in mind, but it's also sometimes like maybe the strategy that you guys chose to prog through a fight isn't actually working out. So then you have to figure out what works for your team and problem solve around it, okay? So this is important for progging. And then, of course, the last thing I want to mention is risk and reward. When you're progging, play safety. It's really important to be safe and to be consistently safe, because wiping to a greedy GCD or whatever and wiping the group is just so much time wasted. Especially, like, again, in some of these longer fights in ultimates or whatever, that extra GCD is not going to be the difference between you're in rage and not. Well, 99% of the time, okay? But I think these are some of the big, like, skill sets for the prog brain, right? Consistency, resilience, awareness, problem solving, and understanding risk reward, right? So let's talk about it. So a virgin progger, to use the meme, changes their rotation / movement based off of some strat they saw on Twitter. That's the kind of shit that happens, right? You got some guy who sees, oh, look, there's some cool uptime strat that I say on Twitter. Let's just fucking try it. And then you waste a bunch of time trying to do this new thing, wiping everyone over and over again. And, you know, it just wastes everyone's time, right? And then, of course, second point here, tilts and blames other people. It's important for you to understand, you know, where, like, that tilting and blaming other people helps nobody, right? And it just brings down the whole group. And then the third point, which we just kind of mentioned too, is greedy for cast / GCDs and killing people and, like, messing up mechanics. Like, this is like really, really, really bad when you're progging. Like, I can't mention this enough, because, like, your additional GCD is 99.999% of the time not going to be the difference between you guys clearing or something. Now, what not killing people does allows your whole team to experience the raid for longer, to get repetition down and to learn the fight better. And, you know, these are the ways. This is like an easy way to just completely dismantle a prog session, right? The last part, of course, is progging based off of crit / direct hit rate on ACT. I put that on there because I know, like, when I'm progging and I see I have dope crit and direct hit rate, I'm like, oh, I should try harder. But in reality, you should just try hard all the time. Dude, the 0.1% in rage, 99% of the time, I swear, is not because people aren't greeting enough. It's like, it's usually because people mess up mechanics, right? That's usually the reason why you hit in rage. Not usually because, like, oh, people haven't had their rotation optimized. It's because people are dying to mechanics. That's like 99% of the time why you're actually not clearing the fight from damage, right? Now, the thing is that, like, of course, when you're progging things over and over again, you'll get better at figuring out where you can get additional casts in. But for the most part, I think this is a pretty good one. Now, of course, I also want to mention that these virgin proggers have small PP syndrome. This is definitely like small PP syndrome stuff that makes them do all these things, right? Now let's talk about the Chad progger. Chad progger, they move the same way each time. Their rotation never changes. They do the same thing over and over again. And that's why they're Chad, right? And then they adjust for the mistakes of others. They see the mistakes that are happening around them, and they try to resolve the mechanic regardless because they understand it and they try to move around them, right? They don't tilt, and they don't try to tilt their teammates. They acknowledge their own mistakes, and they give up uptime for safety. That's crazy, right? And yeah, this is how you want to be. This is the big PP energy guy, all right? This guy, big PP. These are some of the things that I think make you a better raider, especially when it comes to progging, right? Really, the core of it is just consistency, being a good teammate, right? And adjusting, not tilting them, acknowledging your own mistakes, and then, very importantly, just being safe, right? Okay, so let's talk about the other side of the raid brain, which is the parse brain, right? So for anyone who doesn't know what parsing is, essentially parsing is the way it's used colloquially, like the actual word parse just means to like run through numbers, right? Parsing in this context is going through a fight and logging the highest possible DPS numbers that you can, which are then measured up in FF logs where people can upload their parses, and then you can compare with other people who are doing the same raids how much DPS you're doing, right? And so if you have 100 parse, it means you've done better than 100 people, 100% of the people. 99 means you did better than 99% of the people, and so on and so forth. There's some nuances there that I'm not going to go over, but that's essentially it. So having a parse brain is trying to learn how to optimize so that you are better than all the other, raiders that are out there, right? Parse brain's pretty different, but of course you're going to see some of the same things, right? Consistency. If you're parsing and you're trying to get the best parse you can possibly get, you need to be consistent, right? You can't be dropping raid buffs. You can't be accidentally, messing up your combo. The more you have your rotation completely planned out from start to finish, the better you are going to be for your parse, right? Again, parsing is also about resilience. If you're trying to hit a 99 or 100 parse, you are going to have to do a lot of runs, unless you're really, really lucky. And you just have to push through it and be resilient. And you can't tilt. You have to continue to be consistent, right? The other thing, alongside consistency and resilience, is, of course, execution. Parsing is about execution, testing yourself, and making sure you don't mess up. So yeah, if you're messing up your monk rotation, you got to work on it, right? You got to make sure that it's airtight and that you do the same thing every time, and that all the things that you want for your execution are happening every single time, and you're not delaying things. Things are always coming off cooldown when they're supposed to. Because when you're parsing, again, even though a lot of what goes into parsing is getting lucky on certain crits or whatever, the better your execution is, the better your consistency is, the easier it'll be to parse. Parsing, somewhat unlike progging, you get a lot more time to prepare for things, because by the time you're parsing for something, generally the mechanics are known and the timelines are known. And so I think some of the best parsers in the community will have spreadsheets for literally every single action that they are going to take in the fight, right? Because you can do that. Final Fantasy XIV is a game where everything is on a fixed, timeline, and your GCD is on a fixed timeline for the most part. And so you can actually plan out literally everything that you do, and you can plan for downtimes and whatever. And so the better prepared you are, the better you can actually make adjustments to your rotation to make things as airtight as possible. Yeah, so preparation is a big part of what goes into parsing, right? And then, of course, the understanding section is just, this is understanding the fight, understanding your rotation, understanding how these things are combined. This is really under the preparation bucket as well, but this is, I think, one of the big things that happens in parsing, which is just like, hey, do you understand how to do the uptime strategy? Do you know how that might change how you do your rotation? When do you use true north to hit positionals that you wouldn't be able to? Yeah, in preparation, don't worry. Like, I understand that it's important for prog too, but I wanted to mention it more for parsing here because generally when you're parsing, there are more known quantities when you're parsing, right? Like, by the time people parse, like, everything should be at 100% in terms of understanding and preparation. Whereas, like, in progging, you might know generally what is supposed to happen, but you're going to have to problem solve a lot more, which is why on the different sides, I separated problem solving and preparation when, in reality, they're both in both. So yeah, let's talk about the parse chimp. This is the guy who says, I'm going to parse today. And they fail mechanics repeatedly. Their rotations drift uncontrollably. They have that 199 parse. And then they have hundreds of gray parses that are, of course, they're hidden so no one can see them because they're, you know, that's not who they are. They're the 99 parse, not the hundreds of gray parses that they have where they die and whatnot. They kill everyone on their own god run out of excitement. So they're staring at ACT, and they're like, oh my god, my crit rate is at 80%. My direct hit rate is 80%. I'm doing oh, and I died to Shiva slides. You know? And then, of course, the last one is someone else is having god run. I guess everyone else is not as important as me. So my crit rate this run was only 20%. So, you know, whatever. I'll just do whatever this run, right? And then kills everyone else because they don't feel like they're as responsible. So the parse chimp is somebody who is inconsistent, kills people constantly, and they're just unprepared, right? Their rotations, like their execution is not there. They don't understand the fight well enough so that they fail mechanics. And this is also just like the classic parse chimp in my opinion. So anyways, now let's talk about the parse gorilla god, okay? Parse gorilla god, they never drift on their rotations. Raid buffs are always there. They can comfortably adjust to server tick timing, so when they're greeting for GCDs, they know exactly when they can't go for something. And then, I mean, really, what makes you a parse god is just understanding that parsing is a team effort, right? And I think that's something that people probably don't think about a lot, but I think, like, a good parser, exactly, parse gods strong together. I mean, the better you understand how to support your team into having a highest parse, the better it'll look for you, too. For a lot of characters. I mean, as a samurai, maybe you don't care as much. Maybe as a black mage, you don't care as much about other people. But, like, you know, if you're a dancer, my god, you're going to need everybody else, too. And most of the classes in the game have raid buffs that feed off of each other. And so the better everyone else does, generally speaking, it raises everybody. Everybody needs to understand that this is a team effort. You all contribute to each other's parse, right? Be good to your teammate. Get the understanding that you need to, you know, have raid buffs go out at the same time and understand how everyone's doing the mechanics. So if you guys realize that there's a couple of things that are at the center of the two halves of the raid brain. So both prog brain and parse brain. The really important thing here is consistency and resilience. I think those are like the two like biggest skills that a raider can have in this game. Is just being incredibly consistent at everything that they do, and just being resilient and being a good teammate. So, also some of the stuff between the prog brain and parse brain also completely conflict with each other, right? When I talked about prog brain, you know, being safe is generally better than trying to greed, right? Whereas parse, it's not that like being greedy is better than being safe, but just actually knowing when you can do the things, right? So, I think especially prog brain gets infected by parse brain a lot of times. And I think it's really important that you separate the two on some of these skill sets, right? Like, sometimes it's just better to not greed. I know, if you're parse brain dominant, that might sound like blasphemy to you, but it might actually be way better for your team to not go for that greedy GCD that you were like, oh, maybe I can get this, or maybe you die to it and then you wipe the group, right? And then similarly too, if you're parsing, like, you also need to make sure that, like, hey, you know exactly when you can greed for things, and it's like within safety margins, right? So, but I think if I was to say, I think prog brain definitely gets more infected by parse brain than vice versa. But that's kind of what I wanted to say about the raid brain. So welcome to my TED Talk. Thank you for coming. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and whatever. So I hope that helps a little bit on understanding the two sides of the raid brain and how to be more confident and be better at doing both, and making sure that you have the right brain on for the corresponding raid that you need to be. Is there an exam? Yeah, there's going to be an exam at the end of the week.